Okay, we continue with the week number two of the course, developing innovation idea. Okay, so we continue.
Welcome to our second week with Coursera on developing innovative ideas for new companies. We're excited to explore with you this week entrepreneurial motivations and behaviors, and we're coming to you from the Him and CEOs program at the University of Maryland. Him and CEOs is a living learning entrepreneurship program where we have a host of students from many different majors that have come together to learn about entrepreneurial mindset, as well as the motivations, behaviors, looking at customers and industries, developing their financial plans, much like you are. And what we do with these students is we take them through a program whereby they are able to develop their ideas, they're able to do prototyping, and they're able to a team to develop and launch new ventures. Within the Him and CEO's residence, it is as much a technology incubator as it is a residential community. And what we mean by that is students are working together with roommates, with hallmates, and with classmates on developing their innovative ideas for new companies. So this is the typical classroom environment for us. It's very different than the theater-style seating that you may see elsewhere, and that students are facing one another. They're working with one another. And we as faculty are circulating throughout the class, working with them, providing feedback and helping them develop their ideas. So the student teaming is certainly central to what we do. We also work with them in providing some prototyping facilities. And so via this 3D printer, you can see that they are really bringing their ideas into action and are making their dreams a reality. Students are working in a variety of different areas to include engineering and education concepts. They're working in entertainment and building software platforms to teach music theory and music practice. They're also working in the healthcare industry and developing a host of different solutions in those areas to provide more affordable and more accessible healthcare. And communications is also a strong element that is well represented within our program as well. So thank you for joining us here in Him and CEOs, and we invite you to join us for our next lecture on entrepreneurial motivation.
Okay. The opportunity and canvas. Okay.
As we examine entrepreneurial mindset, we want to recognize that at the heart of the matter is the entrepreneur, and that entrepreneurs cause entrepreneurship. Now, what we mean by that is that market opportunities, technology changes, and other factors certainly influence entrepreneurship and influence new venturing. But without the entrepreneur, there's no entrepreneurship. So we want to seek to understand entrepreneurs. We want to understand who they are, what they think, how they think, as well as what influences their decisions. These answers are critical to understanding how to develop, launch, grow, and maintain startup ventures. And we're going to do that by diving into the opportunity analysis canvas in the first segment of entrepreneurial mindset. The first element we're going to look at is need for achievement. Now, what need for achievement means is that it's a preference for challenge. It's that acceptance of personal responsibility for outcomes. It's that personal drive, that element of being a self-starter, that element of being motivated. And when we look at need for achievement, Richard Branson is one great example of that could have retired decades ago. This is a subset of the companies that he started, and the number is around 400. He started very early on doing newspapers and even starting a small record label that we know now as Virgin Records. But he's gotten into spaceships and air carriers and mobile, electronics, communications, balloon flights, music festivals, a variety of things. But what we see here is that it's no longer a search for money. It's no longer a search for fame. There's some internal drive for wanting to do more, to achieve more, to accomplish more. A second element of entrepreneurial mindset that we'll examine is individualism. With individualism, we're looking for someone who is comfortable operating independently, who is comfortable and maybe even has a preference to go against the norm. With that, they need less approval from others. They need less support from others. They are happy in being that independent person. And with that, high individualism is associated with this element of having high levels of initiative and high levels of achievement. We see there with the son of a sign advertising company who inherited the family business in his early 20s when his father committed suicide. He started a television station a few years later. He needed some content for this local Atlanta, Georgia-based television station, and he bought the Atlanta Braves, Major League Baseball team, which in the 1970s was not a very good team, was not a very popular team, and was, in the baseball terms, a fairly inexpensive team. But he used that content and that television platform to build not only a successful television station that had hundreds of hours of programming per year because of the baseball affiliation, but also built a strong fan base in a time before cable television was popular, in a time before satellite television even existed. And through the 70s and 80s and 90s, the Atlanta Braves became America's team and one of the most popular teams in the U.S. He went on down the sports theme into wrestling, professional wrestling. He was a pioneer in news, cable news, at a time when other people thought he was crazy to start a television station that was going to show 24-hour news. His competition was the 6 p.m. news or the 7 p.m. news. So he took something that was only on perhaps once a day, or with the morning news maybe twice a day, and made a 24-hour model. He's grown that into countless other television entities and properties. He's also done restaurants. So Ted Turner, excellent example of somebody with that individual spirit. Control is another facet of mindset that we'll examine. And with control, we're going to look at the element of locus of control in the context of internal versus external. Do you believe that you can influence the surroundings around you? Do you have an internal locus of control, or do you have an external locus of control where you believe you're subject to your environment? So it's this element of what do you attribute outcomes to that makes a difference between are you internally or externally motivated in your locus of control. Internals are much more alert and discovering of new opportunities. They're seeking something. They're looking for something that they can take action on and bring to fruition. What we see there are one individual that looked at the credit card industry and thought he had a better way with PayPal, that looked at the automotive industry and thought that he had a better way with Tesla. And so with that, has had great success and great individual internal locus of control of believing that he and his founding team could change the online payment industry with PayPal, could change the automotive industry with Tesla, and has done it and is having great success with it. Focus is a fourth element of mindset that we'll address. With focus, we're looking for that element of attention, of commitment, of being able to process information, of being able to recognize changing environments, and in this context, let you really believe and see how to focus on a certain task and make that task happen. Time to focus is goal setting, and SMART goals are something that we champion in our courses and in our programs, of setting goals that are specific, that are measurable, that are attainable, that are relevant, and that are time-bound. So rather than trying our best, which typically means we underperform, we want not to set an ambition of selling a lot of shirts, but to make the commitment to sell a certain number, perhaps 100, at a certain price, perhaps $10 each, at a certain time, perhaps by Friday. So when you think about goal setting and when you think about new venturing, we challenge you to set SMART goals for yourself because try your best often doesn't get things done. The fifth element we'll look at is optimism. And with this, we want entrepreneurs that believe in themselves and believe in the opportunity and believe that they can make big things happen. Now, optimism can have its downsides. We might overlook critical elements. Excessive optimism might bring elements of risk that are exceptionally high. So we like to be perhaps cautiously optimistic, but optimistic nonetheless. Some ways of moderating this optimism is to objectively evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your solution versus customer needs now and in the future and versus competitors' offerings now and in the future. You can also balance your optimism and be an informed optimist by gathering information from potential customers, from experts, if they're friends and family that have some expertise, getting their knowledge as well to validate your beliefs and challenge your assumptions. So in summary, when we think about entrepreneurial mindset, we want to recognize achievement and need for achievement and recognize the role that this plays. We want to think about how individualism influences our decision-making. We want to recognize locus of control and try and foster an internal locus of control within ourselves. We also want to be effective in focus and achieve things and set SMART goals. And we want to be an optimist while managing the risk associated with overconfidence.
Hi, I'm Alexa Von Tobel, founder and CEO of LearnBest.com. I started LearnBest because I'd gotten a great education, gone to a great school, and had never learned a single moment of education about my finances. I didn't understand things like my credit cards or thinking about what a 401k was versus a mortgage and how to think through all of the big questions that I should know proactively as a young person. I started doing a lot of research and just realized it wasn't out there. And so I wanted to build what I would want if it came to my finances. Something that was easy, where I could get all the answers, I could take action quickly, and that I didn't feel like someone was selling me something or taking advantage of the fact that I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Money was stressful enough as it is. So I wrote a 75-page business plan about everything that was going on in personal finance. And I actually went back to Harvard Business School, and the heart of the worst recession in truly 81 years was about 2008. I ended up deciding it was the perfect time to launch LearnBest after winning a small business plan competition. And so I dropped out and moved to New York, and the rest is history. In the first year, raised about $1 million, went off to the races 5 years ago today, opened the site, and I truly was client number one. So I was one of those founders where, necessity is the mother of invention. I had the need myself. I wanted someone to help me understand what to do with my own personal finances. I wanted it to be easy and affordable, and I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars or have someone take advantage of the fact that I didn't know exactly what to do. And that's where LearnBest was born. So that's a little bit about the background of LearnBest.com. So much has happened. LearnBest has millions of users. A household, whether you're 22 or 42 or 62, can come to LearnBest for an affordable subscription price of about $500 for the year. You get connected to your own dedicated financial planner, and they're on demand for you via phone and email. And we actually build you a complete dynamic financial plan. Think of it as GPS for your money. And we cover all the things that are stressful. What insurance do you need? What should you do with your 401k? How do you need to prep for emergency savings or for planning for a baby? Big purchases like cars. Thinking about not only all of your investments, but also any student debt, any credit card debt, and helping you really figure out where your dollars should go. So we build you a beautiful LearnBest program. It's the LearnBest plan, and it lives and breathes on your dashboard. And it's just a totally revolutionary way to think about having, a 2015 experience for your money, if you will. Everything's on iPads and iPhones, etc. And so that's what LearnBest is today. And we have a really, really strong mission. Our whole team comes to LearnBest because we believe financial planning should not be a luxury product. every household, again, whether you're really young and just getting started or you're in your 40s and you're really stressed because you have a mortgage and 3 kids and you're trying to figure out how to juggle things like retirement, we believe financial planning should be available to the masses. And so that's what LearnVest does. We also have a really great platform called LearnVest at Work, where your employers can buy a big subscription to LearnVest for all of a company, which is growing rapidly. So it's been really exciting. We've raised about $75 million over the last 4 years. And our team is now about 150 people across 2 offices between Arizona and New York City. Our LearnVest Expert Hub, all of our experts sit between New York and Arizona, so we can cover every time zone. And it's exactly the service that I would want. I am a client, and being a consumer here is just, come to work every day thinking about what I would want and what I do want with my own money and needs for my household. So it's been a very exciting few years, and we're really off to the races and disrupting the financial planning space so that America can have a better financial life. Every household across the country should have a really clear game plan. Think, GPS for your money right there in front of you of where you should be going and how, $5,000 decision today, what that means for next year and 2 years from now, and helping us always make the best financial decisions. It's at the end of the day just math. And so being able to have access to a financial plan program that gives you control is so powerful. And one of the things that we know, so, financially speaking, America's in a tough spot. And I'm not even talking, people below the poverty line. I'm talking most of the country. 76% of people live paycheck to paycheck. The CFPB just released that less than 53% of people are contributing to their retirement. The average household in America has less than $800 in savings. It's stressful, and I don't want money to be stressful. So I always joke, not having a plan is a financial plan. It's a very bad plan. And I think that making financial planning a consumer product that everyone can get access to is going to be able to change the future of America's wallet. It's going to stimulate the economy, and I think most importantly, it's going to give people the ability to sleep better at night, which matters enormously to me. Financial stress is the number one cause of stress. It's the number one cause of divorce. It's the number one cause of distraction in the workplace. The average person spends 5 hours a week juggling some big financial problem or question that's stressing their family out. And we just think we can give people access to better tools to be able to solve all of that. And that comes down to just having a financial plan. For me, when I think about being an entrepreneur myself, it's really in you. It has to be a problem that you want to solve. And for me, financial planning really hits to the core. My New York Times bestselling book, Financially Fearless, shares a chapter of just why I care so much about financial planning. Not only did I see firsthand sort of what catastrophe within your family can really do to a family financially speaking, when I lost one of my own parents growing up, and on the flip side, all the way to being mid-20s consumer, trying to figure out just what do I need to do with my own finances, caused me so much stress, and being able to solve that directly it meant the world to me. And so I always tell entrepreneurs, pick something that really resonates with you. If you don't love fashion, don't work in fashion. If you don't love food, don't create a food company. Financial planning is something I believe in my whole heart and soul, and it's to the core of me. And so I get out of bed every day pretty darn excited to go to work, and I think that that's really because I'm just so passionate about our mission. On the flip side, for entrepreneurs, I always tell people, dream big, because no one else is going to dream for you. Have really, really big aspirations, and then figure out how to get there. But I just, don't limit your own dreams, because again, you're the only person who's going to dream for you. And then my final piece of advice with that is then take every day one at a time. So pick something you're passionate about, dream really big. My goal is, how do I get LearnVest into the homes of tens of millions of Americans? We are not horribly far away from being able to do that, but still, that's an enormous goal. And we're going to get there, but it's going to take a decade. And on the flip side, being in a position where how do I take it one day at a time? Every day is a really unique day as an entrepreneur. There's ups and downs. And so the motto that goes through my head every day is just one day at a time, and bring your best self to work every day. And just take it one day at a time. And it's the most fun adventure in the world. And I think being an entrepreneur is a really unique thing, particularly in the year 2015. So thank you.
With entrepreneurial motivations, we want to focus on 3 distinct elements. We'll talk about self-efficacy, cognitive motivation, and tolerance for ambiguity. And this is the second element of the opportunity analysis canvas. With self-efficacy, it is similar to confidence, but it's focused on your ability to achieve a specific task. So this intersects the element of entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial motivation. It's related to control, but again, it's activity specific. You may be a confident person, but you may not have self-efficacy as it's related to public speaking, for example. You may have high confidence in yourself in general, but you may not have high self-efficacy when it comes to developing cash flow statements in an accounting and financial element. So in this context, what we want to recognize with self-efficacy is that it's a piece of confidence that's task-specific, and it's a top predictor of individual performance in a variety of tasks. When you think about how to improve your self-efficacy, well, mastery is certainly one of those, and that's building experience and building expertise. There's role modeling, which is observing others. There is social persuasion, of verbal encouragement from trusted sources, from our friends and family, that we can do it. And there are other psychological cues that play a role as well. So when we look at some of the great entrepreneurs of our time, to include Thomas Edison, you see a variety of mantras and quotes associated with him. And so with that, we see this element of a can-do attitude, an element of persistence that he exhibits. Cognitive motivation plays a role in that. So with cognition, as a reminder, this is thinking, the process of thought. Individuals with a high need for cognition are those that like the research. They like the hard problems. They like trying to seek out answers. Individuals with a lower need for cognition like to rely on their gut, like to rely on their experience. In this context, we want to recognize that high cognition is a better indicator of entrepreneurial success. We want to train ourselves to want to seek, to want to acquire, to want to analyze. So when we think about high cognitive motivation in solving hard problems, the bagless vacuum was a tough problem for James Dyson to solve. Tough in the context that it took 15 years, 5,126 iterations to solve the problem of how can I make a high-performance bagless vacuum. Now, once he solved that problem, he had tremendous success and is now one of the wealthiest men in Europe and globally, and has a tremendous company with a global footprint, and has product line extensions into other vacuum as well as hand-drying, bladeless fans, and other technologies that are geared by driving wind, either pulling or pushing, in a variety of formats, but solved a hard problem and was persistent in being able to do it. The second element that we'll talk about is tolerance for ambiguity. With tolerance for ambiguity, what we're examining here is the element of trying to work through and recognize that things change. And we want to be comfortable with change. And we want to be comfortable with making difficult decisions in the face of change with imperfect information. When we look too at this element of ambiguity, there is a principle called the singularity principle, that computers eventually are going to be one with humans. And as you've seen the trajectory of going from computers that would take up buildings to rooms, to small rooms and mainframes, to desktops and laptops, to mobile devices, the trajectory, if you believe Ray Kurzweil and others, is that it's going to be intertwined. Everybody's going to have a small computer in their brain that's going to supplement what we do, much like our glasses supplement our vision. In this way, too, we want to think about elements of bias and elements of heuristics, which are simply mental shortcuts that take place in entrepreneurs. The three that we want to emphasize and be aware of are overconfidence, representativeness, and counterfactual thinking. As we look at overconfidence, it's exactly what you think it is. It's more confidence than is necessarily healthy. And what we mean by that is we become overly optimistic on a fantastical future without any real validation or data or research or analysis to support what we're projecting. So we want to be confident, but we also want to moderate that optimism through some of the techniques and some of the research that we talked about previously. The second element that we want to be aware of is representativeness. Representativeness is the element of trying to generalize without appropriate data or rationale. It's asking three people what their favorite color is and assuming that that's the favorite color of everyone. This can be very dangerous for entrepreneurs in that you may build a product that only 3 people in the world want. And so with representativeness, we want to make sure that as we do research, as we talk with experts, as we talk with candidate customers, that we talk to enough of them, and we talk to the right diversification of them to give us some insights, and we don't draw conclusions prematurely. The last element that we want to reference regarding this principle of bias and heuristics is counterfactual thinking, the element of what might have been. What this means for a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly young entrepreneurs, is they often pursue bad ideas because they haven't had enough ideas yet to know what's good and what's not as good. There's a fear that they're going to miss out on success. Now, we want you to be action-oriented. We want you to make decisions appropriately quick, but we also want to caution you against this element of counterfactual thinking and not being too consumed with what might have been, or I may never have the opportunity again mindset. So a degree of patience, a degree of analysis is certainly well-suited and well-purposed for entrepreneurs. So in summary, by understanding entrepreneurial motivation, it's going to improve our success as entrepreneurs. We want to think about how we can develop and cultivate high self-efficacy, how we can develop an appreciation for cognitive motivation and learning to love research and analysis. And we want to also recognize what our own tolerance for ambiguity is and how we can be thoughtful in managing that tolerance and being effective with operating relatively quickly with imperfect information.
Well, entrepreneurship is personal for me. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, a family of people. My father started a hotel company, so this is something I grew up in. But remember, when I graduated from graduate school, it was in the mid-1980s. I was a woman, and I was trying to figure out what's my place in the business world. I knew I wanted to be a business person since I was 5 years old. I saw in my family, I saw how excited my father was to build a company. And I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up. It seemed the most incredible thing to be able to do. And so I was trying to figure out what business, where do I fit? And having a family of business people who were so larger than life and had been so successful, I was looking for the white space, the place where I could make a difference. And so the first business that I decided to start was in the senior living area. And the reason for that was there wasn't an industry, no one was there, but it was an idea that was close enough to things that I knew about hospitality and real estate, but in a new industry. And so that allowed me as an individual and as a woman looking to lead early in my life to really be a pioneer, but I didn't think of myself as a pioneer. I just thought of myself as somebody who was going to build something that somebody else hadn't done before.
As we continue our discussion on entrepreneurial thinking, we want to talk about entrepreneurial behaviors. Specifically, we want to understand how entrepreneurial behavior results and influences our mindset and our motivations, and how it's connected to those. Specifically, we're going to take a look at 4 different areas. We're going to talk about confidence and what role that plays in entrepreneurial behavior. We're going to talk about interpersonal relationship skills, how well you work with others, how well you can engage, communicate, and build relationships with others. We're going to talk about social capital, and you may be familiar with financial capital or intellectual capital, but with social capital, we're going to be talking about to what extent you have rich relationships, that you have diverse relationships, and that there are people within your circle and within your network, and within the network of those that you have a network with, and what role that plays in your entrepreneurial success. And then lastly, we'll talk about risk tolerance. We'll also dispel some myths that entrepreneurs are risk-seeking, and instead talking about how entrepreneurs perceive risk differently than others. So we're looking at entrepreneurial behavior, and that will conclude the third part of segment 1 of the canvas. Confidence among entrepreneurs is certainly a good thing. We want to recognize it's important for entrepreneurs to believe in themselves and believe in the power of what they can do and the potential of their venture. Now, this might require going against some norms and against some advice, but if you doubt yourself too much, it's going to introduce doubt among your team, your partners, your investors, even your customers. Interpersonal relationship skills are tied to likability and communication skills. And for entrepreneurs, it is good to be liked. It is good for customers to like you. It is good for your team to like you. It is good for your investors and partners to like you. And individuals that have the ability to connect are going to have a better ability to connect with customers. This might come naturally to you. It may be something that needs to be learned or enhanced. And so you want to be honest with yourself on where you lay on that and how to improve that. Social capital is similar to financial capital in that it's a resource and a measurable resource, but it's tied to your personal networks. It's tied to your relationships. It's tied to who you know and who they know. And the richness of it depends not purely on the number, not purely on the size, but also in the quality and the diversity of it. I could know 100 attorneys, but I would rather know 5 attorneys and 5 bankers and 5 marketeers and 5 technologists. And that group of 20 would be more valuable and richer than 100 of the same. So building that social capital is incredibly valuable. It's important because people with rich social capital that have the size, the quantity, and the diversity of their networks are better informed. They're more creative. They're more efficient. They're better problem solvers. And with that, they save time. They see opportunities that others don't. They can foster cooperation and collaboration. They can cut through the red tape. They can get the information before it's necessarily popular or publicly known information. And so in that sense, we want to build social capital as entrepreneurs. Risk tolerance is something else we want to think about. With risk tolerance, it's the element of not necessarily being risk-seeking, but in being risk-accepting, of being tolerant of it, and being able to really think about the risk-reward ratios that are out there and how to seek balance with that. So in summary, when we think about entrepreneurial behavior, we want to recognize that this is where entrepreneurial mindset and motivation really comes into fruition. It's how we personally diagnose and personally recognize the level of confidence that we have, our interpersonal relationship skills, our social capital, and our risk tolerance. Risk is an element that's often associated with entrepreneurship. And as I give lectures and speak on panels about entrepreneurship, the topic of risk always comes up. And so we want to talk about that. And we want to deconstruct this a bit. And we want to talk about risk in the context of the tendencies of entrepreneurs to take risk. We want to examine why entrepreneurs engage in risk. And we want to discuss some ways to accurately assess and manage risk. So strategic entrepreneurial decisions are inherently risky. We're doing things that are new. We don't know the outcomes. We're trying to solve difficult problems. We're working in high-consequence environments. And we also want to recognize that risk is often in the eye of the beholder. And we're going to talk about what that means. So do entrepreneurs show higher natural tendencies to take risk? In other words, do entrepreneurs seek risk at a higher rate than anyone else? Well, research time and time again tells us no. That the consensus among researchers is that there's no difference in the risk tendency of the desire to pursue risky activities among entrepreneurs versus managers or non-entrepreneurs. What is different is the perception of risk. So there are other factors that are motivating entrepreneurs to start ventures besides their risk propensity. Now we can look at entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and Tesla that saw an opportunity with PayPal, had tremendous success, took more than $200 million of his own assets, virtually all of his wealth from PayPal, and invested that into Tesla. And at one time, in 2010, mathematically was broke. And how does a 100 millionaire a few times over become broke? Well, they put all their money into a risky venture. But again, risk in the eye of the beholder. What he's done since then is grow the company at the time of this slide deck creation to $123 a share. And I expect in the future, twice that, perhaps 3 times that. And we see that he's back on the path. A few years after being broke, of being not only a 100 millionaire a few times over, but a billionaire based on the success of Tesla and the expected success of Tesla. So why do this? Well, in his case, he saw an opportunity. He saw the opportunity of electric vehicles, and he did not see that as the risky proposition that many others would see it. So why do they engage in risk? Well, they might lack the necessary information to make a good decision. They might have some inside view or some insights that make them think they can accomplish what others couldn't accomplish. They might not be dissuaded by past situations where others fail. And we tend to have some inclination towards a positive outcome. So when you look at this and you think about this with Elon Musk, why not electric vehicles? Why not a nice-looking vehicle that performs better than a gasoline vehicle, that is cheaper to maintain, and that in time might be even cheaper to build when you remove many of the parts that are associated with your gas vehicle? If you remove the gas-powered engine and replace it with a battery, if you remove the transmission, electric vehicles, much like a light switch, are on or off, no transmission. If you remove the element of trying to maintain the vehicle every 3 months or 3,000 miles, the first scheduled maintenance on a Tesla, 100,000 miles. If you remove the need to put gas in the vehicle every week or every other week, it makes sense. It makes sense if you can build it that they will come, and for him, a less risky proposition than it was for others. So key influencing factors of entrepreneurs when they look at this are how high are the risks? What are the rewards? What are the consequences? And were all of the complex elements considered? So when we think about how to make entrepreneurial decisions, and we think about the role of cognitive complexity, it very much is tied to the individual's information processing capabilities. It's tied to how we, as the entrepreneur, see the risk and calculate the risk. There are a number of influencing factors. This element of industry dynamism, while perhaps a complicated term, is really tied into the element of what's changing. How dynamic is the industry? And what can we as entrepreneurs do to recognize the change and motivate that change? Another key element to think about is the context of multiple perspectives. Of can we look at business opportunity as the entrepreneur, as the founder, but also think about it from the perspective of customers and prospective partners, as well as competitors. Not everybody's going to sit still as we launch our venture. So we want to think about what we're going to do, what they're going to do, what we're going to do, what they're going to do. So it's a chess mindset of thinking a few steps ahead. We want to integrate these perspectives into our decision, and that helps us manage risk when we anticipate what's going to happen. We also want to use some complex thinking and take a broad and deep view of the challenges that lay ahead of us. So in summary, when we think about risk, entrepreneurs are not inherently risk-seeking. Instead, they engage in risk for a variety of different reasons that are personally important to them, and it's governed by how they perceive risk, how they analyze risk, how they assess risk, and what they believe they can do to mitigate that risk and have success with their venture.
โอเคสินะครับ